This is the Secure CyberConnect podcast with Adamson and Warren Atkinson, where we're joined by information, cybersecurity, technology and talent acquisition professionals who share their journeys, unique perspectives and offer advice and guidance. Our topics on this episode will be Beyond the Hype, the future of AI is human-centered, from agents to allies, building AI with purpose. Today we are delighted to be joined by Michael Burkhardt. Michael is the founding member of Omdena, a global collaborative AI platform with over 30,000 engineers working on real-world AI solutions. He's helped organizations of all sizes, from startups and NGOs to banks and government agencies, turning AI ideas into practical results. Michael has led more than 30 AI programs with partners like the UN World Food Programme, USAID, and the German Foreign Office. And has also helped the Omdena AI Startup Incubator, which has supported 100 plus startups developing AI solutions. Beyond tech, Michael is passionate about cycling, running, outdoor adventures, and mindfulness practices like meditation, which help him stay balanced whilst building in a fast-moving AI world. He's also a regular speaker at events like the Rise of AI, Data Natives, and various banking innovation conferences, where he shares his belief in building AI that's human-centered and community-driven. Michael, a warm welcome to the Secure CyberConnect podcast today, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Jay. Thanks a lot, Warren. Thanks a lot for the introduction. I was listening to it, and you never reflect back on what you have been doing, and it sounds I'm quite interested and excited to exchange some thoughts with you, and hopefully there's something interesting for your audience, and happy to chat.
You're welcome. We've been really looking forward to this session. So Michael, to kick things off, could you give the audience a very brief high-level overview of some of the themes and topics that we're going to discuss today?
Yes, happy to. So I think we are going to dig a bit deeper into what is happening with AI right now, and connecting that also to how we started in our organization to develop AI solutions in a community-driven way. So looking into how can we develop inclusive and ethical AI solutions through a collaborative approach, because right now there's a lot of thoughts about automation. There's a lot of fear in society, in the market. And there's also a lot of, I would say, a lot of hype and a lot of marketing happening, and also overselling of what AI can do. So hopefully we can cut through the hype a little bit and have a realistic understanding maybe of AI, and also looking a little bit into the future.
That sounds fascinating. Can't wait to unpack that. In particular, your predictions for the future, given your exposure to all the startups that are actually driving innovation in the space. Now, Michael, could you share with the audience something that you're perhaps proud of or excited about, where you feel needs a bit more attention that isn't featured on your LinkedIn, perhaps?
Yeah, you're happy to. I think apart from AI and being in this bubble every day, looking at what new models are being, updated, and all the breakthroughs that are happening, it's really a bubble, and you can carry it away by the speed of it. I think what I've been doing a lot in the last 2 years is to do not spend that much time on my laptop, but unplug, go into nature. And I think the year before, I was taking the bike for a week. I went from south of Germany to Switzerland, and then crossing the Alps, and then entering France, and then going from France to Italy back, and all in a hammock basically. So just the bike and then a hammock, and then not that well prepared, to be honest. So I kind of had to look for the perfect trees every evening and try to find a spot to sleep, but with no laptop, with a phone, but only used in the evening a bit. So I think I'm kind of proud of this, because it helped me to also unplug and to realize, okay, there's a lot happening in AI and, in technology, but there's still the real world, and we have to also, connect back to that. And that's very important for me to stay grounded. So I'm proud of this ride, actually.
That's an incredible achievement and very adventurous. I do admire that.
Yeah, very adventurous. Yeah.
What kept you going? Why did you keep sort of moving on to the next location?
In the trip, you mean? I think what I really like is I really like riding the bike. I still like to get input. So if I'm on vacation, I still enjoy, I think, getting input, different kind of stimuli from different places. So I was just, waking up, whenever I wanted to be, whenever my body felt rested. And then I was just enjoying the nature. And then when there's a lake, right, I stopped by and I was swimming in the lake and I had lunch at the lake. I met some people also. So I went to a yoga class in between, and I even had dinner at a house of some elderly people who were interested in my bike, and then they invited me for dinner and I just had a chat with them. And yeah, I think that's, kind of like getting different kind of like input, but at the same time being very flexible and in terms of where to stay and when to go. That I really enjoyed. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you sharing. And as we move on, could you perhaps share with the audience a significant challenge that you faced in your career that's shaped your views and perspective on AI and helped to lead to where you are today?
Yeah, I think the first project that we did 7 years ago, we were working with a small startup in solar. They wanted to develop a solution which identifies rooftops on low resolution imagery in India. And back then there were solutions for high resolution imagery, right? In Europe, for example, it's pretty easy. You use Google Earth and you kind of like zoom in and the quality of the satellite imagery is quite good. But there the quality was very bad and there was no solution out there. And I think even Google and some other organizations, they tried to solve it and very expensive. And we developed kind of like a community-driven project. We had around 60 people join. And then within 10 weeks, they built a machine learning model which could quite accurately predict rooftops and also certain elements on the rooftop. And that we then shared with a leadership person at Google in India. Back then, the person was very impressed and never thought that can be developed within 10 weeks. And that was a community-driven project. A huge challenge. Nobody really believed in it. But in the end, we developed a quite interesting solution. And that was also the starting point of Omdena, of the company. Yeah, and also for me, because I'm not an AI, I'm not trained on AI. I didn't study AI. I studied innovation technology management. And for me, that also was a very big learning experience to go through this project, to see all the people being very motivated and dedicated to solve the challenge. And yeah, for me, that gave me a completely different understanding. Before I was just also in my own bubble, worked for German companies, and then we did things the way it was done, it was supposed to be done. But then with this very diverse team, it opened up my mind a lot. Yeah, so I think that really shaped my view.
I appreciate you sharing, and it demonstrates the power of community and, of course, the diversity of thought.
So, leading on from that, we've talked before, Michael, and we've talked about the fact that we're in the middle of an AI revolution. So the big question is, who is it built for? Why do you think that's a conversation that we're not really having enough of?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think that the speed is really, it's growing exponentially. So it's even hard for people in AI to keep up with all the updates. And outside of this whole, again, I call it a bubble, it's even harder, right? So when I'm talking to some friends also, or people from my family about AI, almost none has any idea what really is possible at the moment, what is happening and what might be happening in the next few years. And I think that a lot of organizations are, they are hyping up the potential of AI, and they already promise that within a couple of months or a couple of years, everything is going to be autonomous and a lot of jobs will be replaced. And that's all kind of like fine, because that to a certain degree is true that certain jobs are going to be replaced and processes are going to be automated. But what's missing here is how can we transition into this in a way that, not society and people that I just mentioned who do not have the maybe interest also, right, the tools as well to learn about AI and to, get involved in all of that, to kind of like, how can we not leave them behind, right? So that's something that, in my opinion, is not really discussed enough in politics. It's not discussed enough. It's upskilling education is not really something that is discussed enough. I don't see any interesting initiatives happening here. Also in Germany, it's very slow, in my opinion. So yeah, that's a big gap here. Yeah.
And I think we're going to talk about that in a bit more detail a bit further on the episode for sure. Just before we get into the sort of the meat of it, really, talk to us about Omdena, and how your work there has reshaped your view on what ethical AI, really looks like in practice.
So around 8 years ago, I met Rudra, who's the CEO of Omdena, and he already had, I think, 1 or 2 AI startups before. And back then I had started to learn about AI, and it was the time of competitive platforms and hackathons. So a lot was around kind of like people trying to build the best fit model for a certain problem and then fine tuning it and increasing the accuracy. And then there was a leaderboard, and then the best model wins kind of. And what we thought was missing is a collaborative platform. So a platform where people with diverse skill sets come together to solve interesting problems and challenges. And in order to build AI solutions, you have different challenges. You have the data, right? Where does the data come from? How to make sure that the data is bias-free, or at least, little bias in the data. How can you make sure that the quality is good, right? And it might be that you need people who understand the context very well of the problem that you try to solve. If it's around misdisinformation, for example, what is misdisinformation? If it's about languages, under-resourced languages, you need people who understand the languages. So there's a lot of context and local experience and community, right, needed to build those solutions. So what we did is we started to run several AI innovation challenges, which is those teams with 50 to 60 collaborators, usually from around 20 countries, very diverse. We also had a lot of women right from the start in our projects, because I think back then in AI, I don't know, these numbers, like 2% of leaders in AI are women or something like that. That's what I remember from back then. And we had almost 40-50% in those projects organically, right? So somehow we attracted a lot of women also to apply for those projects. And we did those challenges. We did around 200 of those. So we built a community out of that. And now in the last 2 years, we developed our own agentic AI platform. So now in the beginning was just humans and the network and diversity, right? And now we have the agentic platform, which has AI agents, which help to, for example, check the code, which help to check for DevOps compliance, which look into bugs and so on, which support the humans to develop those AI solutions. So now it's still human powered, but it's kind of like AI accelerated. Yeah, and that's what we're doing at Omdena, essentially.
Fantastic.
And generative AI is the latest buzzword. It's undeniable, it's out there. So I suppose the big question really, Michael, is what actually works and what's wishful thinking? Now, with an industry buzzwords such as AI agents, some calling them the next phase of personal assistance, others calling them the job killer, as you mentioned earlier, for instance. So from where you're sitting, why is this wildly overrated?
Yeah, so I think there's huge potential in Gen AI and AI agents. And even, I would not have expected that it happened so fast, that these breakthroughs just, basically come month by month. Even though now also some of those models, they are actually performing worse. So there are some providers which, published the models and now they are performing worse. So we can also go some steps back, and there are a lot of challenges and bottlenecks. So I think overpromising is all of this autonomous systems and that everything is run autonomously. And then you hear CEOs from large tech companies saying, 30% of code, 40% of code is already written by AI agents. And then you have all of these influencers on LinkedIn, which, use fear-based techniques to get attention, essentially. So they post all of these things and then you get a lot of likes and then a lot of comments, and then you can promote your own brand, your own company through this. So, but that's the strategy behind it in most of these cases. But there are also a few voices which try to cut through the noise and leave comments and give a more realistic understanding. And to be very honest, I think to really understand what is happening in these models, you need to have a very technical understanding. And you need to really dig deep into how those models are being built. And then you realize that they are not, general purpose AI. They are not above human intelligence AI. They are still, systems which learn from patterns, which are not creative, which are not coming up with, let's say, new ideas and ways to, or even problems that are worth solving as we humans do, right? We are still the people in charge who say, okay, let's do something with the AI. And when you then, try using those systems, you also realize if you don't do the prompting part well, if you don't give it very clear instructions, and sometimes you need to tell it 50 times, don't do this, unless it learns it, right? So you can use ChatGPT as an example. You want to write maybe an email, or you want to write a blog article, and it has to sound very close to your own kind of like voice and writing style. So you need to give it instructions for this. You need to give it examples. So you need data and context. And then you constantly need to refine the instructions, right? And then if you make it more complex, right? So if more data or different data sources come in, then you need to give it even better instructions and more data, right? So, and if you really do that, you realize, okay, that's what you need, right? You need to fine tune the AI basically. And also you need to ask the right questions. You need to have the domain expertise. You need to be a good writer to write great articles or good articles with AI. Otherwise, nothing will happen. So it's still very important that you as a human, you have this deep expertise that you have to acquire. So all of this knowledge that we have gathered now individually, it's very important. Experience is still very important. So so I would say very interesting, a lot of interesting use cases, but most of what is written right now is a lot of sales and marketing. So we can relax a bit and can try it out on our own and then see where we are really, at what stage we are really at the moment.
Yeah, I appreciate sharing. And are there any other systems perhaps out there that are generally useful right now, or even ones that you feel are popular, but are perhaps still missing the mark when it comes to the lack of human nuance?
I would say, I'm using different large language models for different purposes. So, for example, for content, I use mostly ChatGPT. And I think it's doing that quite well to write up articles and proposals. And for example, coming up with mock-ups in terms of a graphic for a website, I'm using Gemini. And then for coding, there are some other tools that can be used. And I'm trying to use 4 to 5 different tools simultaneously. And then I try to, see what works best for me. And then build my own tool set, my own technology stack. And then you have very specific tools, of course. So you will have tools for sales, you will have tools for marketing, for lead generation. And it connects back to what I said, right? So you have this very specific AIs or LLMs trained on very specific business data, and they perform much better than the kind of like generalistic LLMs, which are trained on huge amounts of data. So even SAP, right, from Germany, they are developing also different AI agents for particular sectors in business data, right? So then they have, at the end, maybe they have hundreds of AI agents, all trained on very specific data, and then those are connected under one master AI agent. But below it, there are, hundreds of very specifically trained AI agents. Yeah. Is that answering your question, Lauren?
Yeah, we've seen an uplift in solutions in the market that are helping to chain them together and communicate effectively. Because at the moment, I think there have been challenges in terms of communicating with the AI systems that organisations have internally. And we've seen a lot of progress, especially over the last 2 to 3 months. And I think from a public standpoint, although we understand AI has been around for some years, the public have only seen it for sort of 18 to 24 months. And the journey we've gone on already, it's really inspiring.
Yeah, and also the public thinks ChatGPT and so on, this is AI, right? That's the only thing that AI is, but there's lots of things like the computer vision, the image detection, they are different. There's a lot that is below all of that. And it's not just, one AI model which is trained on gigantic data. Yeah, makes sense.
So you talked about this earlier on, human-centered AI. It's a phrase that gets thrown around an awful lot by tech companies and researchers, and I guess it all depends on how it's applied and understood. It's clearly a buzzword to signal that sort of ethical alignment and progressive values without, more often than not, having any substance behind it. it's kind of ambiguous. It's surface level, and it doesn't really deeply address user needs or ethical bias and fairness and social impacts. So what does human-centered AI mean to you? Not as a catchphrase, but as a guiding design principle. How do we ensure we're not just dressing up automation in a less intimidating and friendlier name?
I think it all has to do with transparency on how those solutions are being built, right? So we have also closed source and open source, and we had this before also ChatGPT, OpenAI, it was closed source, right? Then there came a little competitor from China, let's say, and then suddenly things changed. So I wouldn't trust individuals saying something about AI without making open and making clear what actually has been built, how the architecture looks like. And the same for companies that are building AI solutions. So how have these solutions been built? What type of data has been used? And then you have explainable AI tool sets, which help you to figure out how the AI actually made decisions. So you can better understand how it came up with a certain prediction and outcome. And you have to include the users right early on in the design process, which is kind of like common practice. If you look at how usually AI solutions are built, is that you have users be part of the development journey early on. In Omdena, that would be, we have the community part of it. We have, as I mentioned, projects around misinformation or hate speech or something around language. We will need to have people from the local context be part of those projects. And you have a lot of testing, of course, right? So you will never roll out something without having it properly tested. And then you decide also, of course, the autonomy of decision making. So what type of decisions is the AI going to make? So in the case of the hate speech project that we had, we only used this for quite clear cases of hate speech. So with domain experts and local engineers, we decided, okay, where are we very certain that can be classified as hate speech? And then the AI system classifies this as hate speech, but there's no follow-up decision or process after that, right? So there's nothing being posted or somebody is being flagged or something like that. It's just a data point, and there's no autonomous decision-making power. And that's also very important for the whole agentic AI systems. We have to think, okay, what kind of decisions are they going to make for us? Yeah.
And in terms of yourself, I suppose going back there, but probably a real question, is it being used performatively or transformatively? Then, that is the real question, isn't it? Always. In terms of yourself, working with communities on the ground, from climate initiatives across to healthcare, maybe share with us a story where you've been involving real people and that's changed the outcome of the tech.
There are many cases, but they are these more simple, let's say, it's not simple, but there are use cases where you obviously don't need a local community to be involved. If you build a sales prediction engine, you don't need to have people locally, unless it's very local kind of like sales data that you train it on. But an example project is we are working in Bhutan, and in Bhutan there's local languages and there are local dialects, and obviously the large language models out there, they do not work on Tonga, for example, or any under-resourced languages. So in this particular case, we built a Google Translate for their local language, and we needed to build the whole corpora, of language data first. So we needed to build our own data set, and we needed to have people locally who tag the data, who understand the meaning of certain words in a different dialect, and that is a very manual process. And that alone took several months, to build a data set, which is good enough to then train a machine learning model on. So I think that's an example where you need to have people locally. And obviously we are in this bubble, when we use those LLMs, but there are billions of people which cannot take advantage of these solutions and models.
Look, we've talked about this. It's certainly been the theme throughout the episode. The future isn't man versus machine. It's got to be a partnership. In terms of moving past the sort of fear narrative, that AI is here to take our jobs and moving more towards one which is about genuine collaboration. Because after all, technology should augment human capabilities, not erase them. How do we move past this fear narrative? What is the best approach here?
Yeah, I think to be honest, right, to just be honest, that certain jobs and processes will definitely be automated, and that has to be also communicated by politics, right, by government. But I think those guys are kind of like afraid about their own kind of like agenda and career, right? So it's all a bit hesitant. So I think it has to become very transparently. And then there have to be, that's a challenge, that's a problem, right? And then there have to be solutions offered to get rid, or let's say to diminish the fear, right? Because change is definitely happening, and better we prepare ourselves now. And I think that needs to be done through education, right? To show that there are ways to learn, right? There are ways to learn those AI tools and to use those LLMs and then also it's a lot of fun also, because some of the work you maybe don't want to do anyway, right? So you can already automate it, and then you get better at it at using those tools, and that's also fun, right? So you see, oh, okay, cool. Now I can prompt my own kind of like agent, and I can build my own custom LLM or GPT, and it works, right? And it improves my work, and that's a success. So I think we have to move towards this. And then we have to think, we also have to think what the responsibility is of those super large organizations, right, which are building all of these models and which are automating everything. So what is their role, right? What can they do also maybe for society and support this whole transition into a more AI-driven workforce and society? Which I don't think also is happening really, right? It's more, this is a competition game now. Oh, I'm doing this model and next week our model is better. And then this is amazing and another breakthrough. And it's a super competitive narrative. And that's unfortunately, right, how the world is working in many ways, that there is just competition and countries against each other and corporations against each other. Yeah.
Yes. Nothing changes there, Michael. Humanity, from the space race to the AI race, it's always the way. What do you think an effective AI co-pilot actually looks like there? What are the key design choices that make or break that dynamic?
I would say it has to make your life, your work easier, right? So it has to actually work, and it will not work immediately. So it will need some iterations before you see the value in it. And that's normal. That's part of the process. So if for the audience, maybe, right, I think we all will have our own co-pilots for different tasks, right? So if you're working in sales, you might have a co-pilot which helps you to come up with email sequences. You paste in certain companies, it helps you with research, and then it suggests you an email sequence. It suggests you some case studies, use cases for this particular company segment. And in marketing, you will have something like that, maybe in HR, right? It helps you with scanning through CVs. It helps you with preparing interviews. Obviously, in programming and coding, you have that as well. In the creative jobs, right? You can also have that if you're an artist, musician, it can help you with coming up with ideas for songs. So I think everyone has to build their own AI co-pilots. And the first step is to understand what is currently the manual process that you go through, and translate this manual process into instructions for the AI, right? To kind of like duplicate or replicate your thinking process and putting that as instructions into the AI. And then understanding what data you need that you have right now internally, right? That's the context that you're giving to the AI. And then you build that in. And as part of this process, it also helps you to reflect your own thinking process. So you also identify bottlenecks in your own thinking. So, and then, right, you have to test it, fine tune it. And that's really what AI is about, or AI projects are about. You build something, you maintain it, you fine tune it, new data is being added, you constantly fine tune it, improve it, maybe add some additional features to it. Yeah. And that, I think, that's the era that we're in. We will have our own co-pilots, and better we build them for ourselves and start to build them for ourselves right now, because it will anyway happen. Yeah.
Appreciate you sharing. And we've obviously spoke about ethical AI use cases, and you've worked with NGOs, banks, startups. You've been involved in driving secure and ethical AI adoption, achieving and demonstrating significant return on investment. So briefly, what have you learned along the way? How do businesses do this at optimal level?
So in terms of startups, I mean, that's, to be honest, it's the first startup that I have, that I'm part of. And 7 years ago, I remember I was in Tokyo, and in Tokyo there, I was at an event, kind of like where startups were pitching, and everyone was talking about raising money and pitching to investors. And there was this one guy who actually raised some money, and then we went to a club, and then he spent 2,000 or something like that on some bottle of champagne, and he was very excited and happy about it. But to me, I was very, in German you say green behind the ears, so I was kind of inexperienced, right? I was new in this whole environment, but it felt wrong to me. I mean, you raise some money and then you spend it on something like alcohol, and then it's a lot of money. Something felt wrong for me, and then I started to learn, okay, how this whole, for example, VC model works in many cases, and you also see so many startups with like huge valuations, which right now fail. Right, they are not profitable. They just got a lot of money. They had an interesting idea, and but still they fail. There's no market fit, right? So. And our CEO, Rudra, he had a few startups before, as I mentioned. So he always said, we need to do sales, right? We need to build the business. And we got a little investment from Mexico, just very little investment to sustain ourselves for like 6 months. But we and I needed to sell. So just talking to people all the time, and then doing a lot of free projects and validating the model. And then very slowly some sales came in, and then making the company profitable, basically. And I think now we would be in a better position also if we want to raise investment, because now we have a profitable company. And I think that's the most important, I would say, right? It doesn't apply to all the business models or all the they are very research intensive startups. It's different game. But if you're selling something, you got to make it profitable. You have to think about this. And pitching and talking to investors takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. It's selling, right? It's like selling a product or service. So this time is lost into selling your service and product. So I think it's important to do the sales, to build the community, to build the trust, the relationships. Because right now we have a lot of clients, recurring clients, and we have the trust, right? They know Omdena, they have been working with us for free, maybe in the beginning. No? I just yesterday had an organization reach to us, very large organization. We did a free project for them 5 years ago, and now they have some funding, and they would like to make us a long-term partner with like 3-4 projects a year.
That's inspiring to hear. And it's good to see that the value you've demonstrated up front is come full circle, and now you've got a partner that hopefully you've got a long-term journey with. And look, it's undeniable AI's revolution, sales and marketing. But how do we balance the use of these powerful tools with the need of transparency, trust, and of course, consent?
I think it has to be built into the process right from the start, right? If it's about, I also think that your customers, they want to have this transparency. They want to have these ethical design principles built into your product and service. Definitely, we see that with NGOs. So for NGOs, for us, it's always very important to explain how we are building those solutions, how those local communities work. And in Omdena, that's why we developed this agentic AI platform, which gives a lot of transparency. So as I said, there's an AI agent looking into the code, what has been developed in terms of the code on a weekly basis. Then it flags potential bottlenecks and bugs. Then it looks into DevOps compliance. Is that an AI model which is easy to deploy and maintain and scale? And then we have our own ethics framework, design framework right from the start. So we look at, as I said, criteria like this autonomous decision-making power, the data sensitivity, the potential for bias. All of that is built into a kind of like a framework right from the start that we go through. So I think you have to combine that. And I think also you've seen in the market, companies who are not that transparent at one point, they will get forced to become transparent.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Really fascinating stuff. And from your perspective, how can we spot the difference between companies that are truly building AI for good and those that are just slapping on an ethics label for PR purposes, for instance?
Yeah, I think again it connects to how are they really transparent about what they're building, right? So it doesn't need to be always open source, but how open are they about their design principles? And then you can look at the products and services that they have been offering in the past, and you have a look. Okay, is that something which actually generated some value? And I wouldn't focus on individuals. Also, people are so obsessed with individuals and believe everything a person says. And I would not, obsess with individuals. I would look at the organization as a whole and would try to, make my own opinion out of that. But I wouldn't support too strongly this direction or this direction. I think for me, the truth is always kind of like in the middle. There's no single person really completely right. And if you look at all of it, like there are Elon Musk and Trump, and then you have Sam Altman, and you have all of these different individuals, and then people are supporting very strongly this direction and very strongly this direction. I think it's a combination of all. And somewhere in between, right, of all of those different opinions, there's the truth, and there's where I try to position myself. That's how I approach it. Yeah.
As with most things in life, to be fair, Michael, the truth is always somewhere in the middle.
Certainly agree with you there. And as we sort of lead into the future predictions of AI, I'm obviously curious to understand from your perspective where it's all heading and what's worth fighting for. So from your experience, Michael, what's the one change we need to make and how AI is developed to ensure that it's both ethical and inclusive?
I would say open. We have to be open, and we should go for more open source. And it would be great if we can collaborate more also on a cross-national level instead of having all of these competing AIs. But it's something that I don't think will happen. I think it's I don't think we are there yet. Maybe we will never be. Maybe that's kind of like the nature of a human kind. But that would be something that I would support. But even if we are still competing, it's not that competing is always bad, right? It's also fun to compete. I also like to compete. I like to do sports, and I would lie if I say I don't like to, cycle very fast and cycle faster as somebody else, right? And compete with my peers. I think that's completely normal, but it has to be at balance and not at the sacrifice or cost of 98% of the people out there, right? So there has to be some responsibility. And apart from that, for me, it's really the educational part, being very open, communicative. And I think for everyone listening, people are already interested in AI anyway. So just go out there and, build those systems on your own. You can vibe code, right? That's very interesting. You can, you can basically ask LMs to come up with code. You can build your own front ends. You can really do a lot of interesting work. You still need very good developers. You still need UX designers. They will improve the work a lot. But at least you can, come up with a mock-up. You can build your own prototypes. And that's a lot of fun. So I would just start, getting hands-on and not waiting for anyone out there trying to solve or expecting anyone out there solving your problems. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, some great advice for individuals and for organizations and businesses that may be listening or watching today. You've championed co-design within communities. So how can business make sure that they truly build for people and not just for themselves?
Yeah, I think there are companies which right now, which are very early in the AI maturity process, right? So there are companies which do not have an AI team. And for them, it's about definitely upskilling education. There are a lot of resources out there. And I would suggest to start with, some theory about Gen AI and agents and so on, and then go into case studies and then do very much case study driven education, coming up with use cases for the organization within, and then building small pilots, 6 to 8 week kind of like pilots, which can be built very efficiently. And the whole process of basically going through the educate part, right, then the innovate part, and then kind of like the scale part as the last step. I think that will bring a lot of insights to an organization. And to be honest, everyone is figuring out AI right now. Even the large companies, they are also still figuring out AI. So there are departments in those very large corporations which are very entrepreneurial. And they are also figuring out AI, and they come up with use cases and they build pilots. It's not that, everyone is doing it basically. So, and also small businesses, mid-sized businesses, they have to start doing that. And it doesn't cost the world, to be honest. So that's what I would suggest to organizations. And I mean, the AI core companies or companies which already have some experience with AI, they do this already, right? So but there are also some challenges in larger organizations, which there's this gap between business departments and AI departments. So there are these small AI departments, and then the business departments come to the AI departments, and then they have like unrealistic expectations and requests. Okay, what is it? I want to build this AI. I want to build this system, but the data qualities are very important in all these things. So there's still also this big gap in organizations which are more advanced with AI. So we need to close this gap. Yeah. And I think that needs to be done through very hands-on case study driven education. And then having use cases within the company, because that's what, people work with daily. So instead of just doing courses, online 20 hours courses, which teach you some theory, it has to be right from the start connected to your own organization and the context that you operate in.
No, that's brilliant. Appreciate you sharing. And Michael, at this point in time, obviously you're exposed to the bleeding edge of innovation. What's exciting you the most about the future of AI and humans working together? And how do we ensure that all of these tools and the real world impacts are ones that are sustainable?
I'm personally excited about what is going to be possible with AI. So I'm excited about the new opportunities that AI brings. I like to learn. I think it is always good for people to learn. It always gives you energy if you learn something new. And I think that brings a lot of joy also in the process. So I'm excited. I think that through AI, we will have a lot of joy as well if we start using those systems. And it will help us to get rid of some of the work that we really don't want to do, which is also good, I think. I mean, I already see some work that I really didn't enjoy doing that now can be done through AI, and I like that. I'm also excited that hopefully it will solve some of the pressing challenges in the world, and it will help hopefully also a lot of people which are facing disease, which are facing climate related issues. So I'm also excited about this. And I'm also excited that hopefully I hope that we can also connect back to nature. I hope that that's for me personally super important. And to be very honest, in the first 3-4 years in Omdena, I was working a lot. Didn't take much vacation, and I was very deep into the AI bubble. But now I think it will also free up some time. It will give us hopefully also a bit more space and reflect back on, okay, what really makes our human existing worth, right? And AI definitely is a part of it. Technology is a part of it. But what's out there, I think, is the foundation of everything. So I hope also that it gives a bit more space for people to reflect and connect back to the real world. The not real world maybe, but the real world is changing. The real world is also now AI, the old real world.
So in your own journey, obviously there's going to have been some challenges, and I suppose it'd be interesting to know how breaking them fueled your success, and maybe if you could then share some differences between yourself as a successful startup and maybe those that don't make it, and give some tips to sort of how founders can embrace this from the start of their journey.
We also still have challenges in Omdena. So as a startup, I think when we started, a lot of VCs also and programs, they said it will not work, especially this impact-driven angle and this societal angle will not work, and you will not be able to build a profitable business out of that. But considering this, I would say we did a quite good job. We are profitable and we have been growing. We also see that The NGO space is difficult for sure. So what's happening with USAID, for example, there is a lot of inefficiency in NGOs and they need to overthink how they operate. That's completely right. And it also was very bureaucratic for us. So if you are a company startup, which is, more into the social domain, there are a lot of challenges. But in Omdena, what we did is we try to balance it. So we also work with, as I said, banks is an interesting sector that we are entering now, where we have more and more clients. We are working with startups and scale-ups, carbon management, ESG, in agriculture, precision agriculture, right? So there are a lot of industries also where you can combine business and impact. So you need to find this balance also. And then I would say it's for first-time founders at least, second-time founders most likely as well. It's just also a lot of work, right? So I think for me, you have to be prepared to also put a lot of work in. So I see sometimes people that they think they raise and then they are successful, right? That's one part of the story. And then also then maybe they want to work 20, 30 hours a week and do multiple things at once, right? So having maybe a few businesses or, traveling the world and on the side building a business. For me, that I can't imagine that Omdena would have worked with this approach. But maybe there are people who can do multiple things at the same time and do all of them successfully. And there are people, of course. But for me, it's really about focus. So really putting in the focus over an extended period of time. And then, especially in sales, right, 95% of people will say no. But then you continue and then, some opportunities come and then you look back 1-2 years. There were actually quite a lot of opportunities. So yeah, patience, I would say as well. But then also, I would say also realizing when it's time to stop and when it's time to reflect and maybe make a break, think about changing direction, recharging the batteries. For me, that was a big learning. As I said, 4 or 5 years, I was going full mode and that was too much. So at one point I realized, okay, I did a vacation. I thought, oh, interesting. I'm getting more and more relaxed. And so I didn't know that, you can become very relaxed. And I realized, okay, it's important for me to more work like a lion. So you have these sprints, right? And you put in a lot of energy and effort and you solve these sprints, but then you also, go back to the trees in the shadow and then you relax and you recharge and then you have another kind of like sprint. So that was for me also very important learning because startup it takes time, right? I read it takes like 10 years usually to build something of real value and also of maturity, right? Which is sustainable. It takes 10 years in average. You see these startups 2 or 3 years, like multi-million, but they are not from within, they are not sustainable and mature. So yeah, those are my learnings.
No, and with that in mind, we all understand that venture capital is becoming more competitive. And you've mentioned, obviously, raising and hitting valuations are a key driver for many of the startups. But how can they redefine success in 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, I would say for us, what success looks like is that the company has to be self-sustaining, profitable, and it has to make an impact. So it's not just a financial impact, but in our case, it is impact in terms of the companies that we can support with AI development, which might not be able to afford, multi-million funding or investments into AI. So we can help also startups to make an impact with AI and build their own systems. And systems don't have to be that expensive. There are some organizations, consultancies, which charge millions for a system which costs 50,000 in reality, right? So that's, I think, an impact that is important. For us, another impact is on the developer side, giving people opportunities. There are a lot of very smart individuals out there, developers, which might not go to the top tier universities and have a CV which looks top notch, but they are equally smart or even smarter and they just need the opportunities to grow. So that's also impact for us. Yeah. And that's how I would define success. And then also trying to give back to the community, right? So when you build a company, is that all of that money going to be centralized along like 1 or 2 people? Or is there a way maybe to have the community also benefit from it and give more back to the community? If it's going to be a really successful organization, the whole community should benefit from it. Yeah. So I think also that's very important.
No, appreciate that. And very briefly, Michael, obviously you've had a very successful sort of sales and impact background. You've brought businesses together to help drive your innovation, of course, success. But briefly, how would you best define high performance?
How would I best define high performance? Yeah, I think high performance comes through one element is clear communication, transparent communication. So a team needs to be able to understand each other, right? Effective communication, that is very important. Then I think data driven. It has to be data driven. So numbers have to be set and they have to be also realistic. Unrealistic numbers also can be very demotivating. So they have to be realistic numbers set. And then like progress has to be made. And then this progress also has to be celebrated. So instead of just looking for the next, no, also, milestones have to be celebrated. And I think people should they should feel appreciated for this, especially in startups, right? And progress happens not all the time, right? It can, maybe you are stuck for 3, 4, 5 months and then suddenly, right, you hit a new milestone. So it has to be appreciated. And then I think also this hustle culture in startups can be very toxic. So again, also there's more work to be done, but there has to also be a balance. And that has to be also communicated back to the team so that they also feel comfortable, right? To take some time off, right? To recharge, but also everything in a transparent and trustable manner. So I think that's very important. Then open communication also, right? In terms of what challenges, what problems are you facing? So that we can solve those problems together. Instead of trying to always perform and kind of like force, right? But let's be open right from the start. If you have some sort of challenge, maybe with a certain task, or you're not learning fast enough, or you feel overwhelmed or whatever, right? Better to communicate that early on. And then let's try to find a solution. And especially in remote work, that's very hard to get all of these things right.
How do you find a balance in mindset, especially if you are a remote worker or a high performer that's in a high pressure environment? Some individuals use exercise to sort of take themselves away. But personally, is there anything that you find effective or anything you could recommend for individuals that are listening today?
Yeah, for me, it's being also grateful about what you already have and the small steps that you are taking sometimes. And that's for me very important because I was, especially in the first 4 or 5 years, I was always looking for next and even bigger. And then this mindset translated into also my private life, my personal life. Then I was, riding the bike. Then I wanted to go right even higher and then more kilometers. And then I was running and then I wanted to do Ironman and everything became kind of like competitive. And for me, the mindset shift for me was to just be happy also with more simple life, to be honest. Just because I realized the simple things would really make you happy, right? So you want to get somewhere, you want to make some progress. Yes, definitely, it's all good. But I think then, again, like playing with my dog now or the dog of my girlfriend and myself and riding the bike, yes, doing some challenges one and there, going up the Alps, okay, if I feel like it, but also just having a normal ride without tracking everything with a smartwatch. Yeah. You need to learn that. I mean, people can tell you this, but I think you really, sometimes you need to also feel the pain and then you learn it.
Absolutely. Look, as we wrap things up with regards to the episode, you've obviously been involved in a lot of amazing and impactful work, as Warren said. Just very briefly, can you give us a sneak peek into any exciting developments or upcoming projects that are on the go, and what does the future hold for you guys?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of upcoming projects in different sectors. So as I mentioned, the most recent one is on a lot are happening around obviously Gen AI, knowledge management systems, being a knowledge management system, for example, banks, financial institutions, bringing all their data together and then having their employees have access to it and then potentially turning that into a customer facing interface like a chatbot. There's a lot happening. We are doing that also around ESG and carbon management, helping organizations who come up with ESG reports and then benchmarks, measuring carbon and kind of like tracking through, for example, satellite imagery, how much deforestation has been happening, right? So there's a lot happening in Omdena. I think our core focus is the agentic platform right now, to use this agentic platform more and more, giving organizations access to this platform. And also fine-tuning the AI agents and making sure that they work very well for all of those different types of projects. So that's really our focus. We are still doing a lot of impact-related work. We are working with NGOs. US is not that... USAID, right, has been closed down. So there are a lot of challenges in the NGO space now. So we are a bit, let's say, we are slowing down a bit here. We are waiting for what is about to happen. But I think there's a lot of potential in the startup, scale-up, and SME market, mid-sized enterprises, small to mid-sized enterprises. And I think for now, it's the time for them to really start adopting AI. Even in my region, there are a lot of mid-sized enterprises in automotive, in manufacturing. And now they slowly realize, now we should get started. So that's also focus for us in Omdena, to help those organizations.
Exciting stuff. Well, look, we'd like to say a huge thank you. It's been a great episode. For any of our listeners who want to stay connected, other than LinkedIn, where else can they reach out to you?
I think LinkedIn, I'm quite active. I think LinkedIn is the best address. I used to write some blogs also. If you type in my name, you will find some blogs from my travels. If you're interested, if you're an entrepreneur and you like to explore the world, I think there's some interesting blogs from my travel. I've been to like 30 countries in the last 7 years. But apart from that, just drop me a message on LinkedIn Connect and then we have a chat. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to hopefully grabbing time to talk through your adventures. I'm a big believer in world travel myself, so I'm sure we could sort some exciting stories together, Michael. Look, thank you. Great episode. Huge thank you to yourself. Community will have certainly found a lot of value in today's episode. For continuing the discussion and more sustained engagement, we invite you to join the Secure Cyber Connect podcast community platform, where we offer a range of collaborative solutions to both technology and security professionals, as always at no cost. These include expansive community access, mutual mentoring programs, online networking sessions, and a range of exclusive interviews such as this, with panel discussions and masterclasses coming later in 2025. Thank you very much, everybody.
If you're struggling with cultural, technological, or talent acquisition challenges, reach out to the Secure Cyber Connect team, where we offer advice and guidance, and we're here to help.